Today I'm going to be writing out names of people who have requested their name in the comments, and unlike usual, I'm actually going to be teaching you how to write your name yourself. As usual with brush lettering, apply light pressure on the upstrokes and harder pressure on the downstrokes. First up, Tiffany's name. Start with putting a line down and then a line across to cross that T, and then start out with your I, leaving enough tail to connect the F. 2 Fs, this is my favorite style of doing them. You can totally do it another way, and then leaving enough of a tail to attach the A at the end. From the tail of the A, looping over to create your N, and then attaching the Y at the very end. I like looping them pretty far around, and then bringing them higher up to create a clean look, and then dot that I. And then next up we've got Maverick. For this M, I like to create a really loose and flowy look, so we'll start it with a small tail on the start of it, and then looping down and looping back over. I like to leave some room between the lines of the M just to create a looser look, and then from the tail of the M, adding on the A, picking up the strokes in between, adding the V, bring the V a little bit higher up so that the E can be tucked underneath it with the R looping around. Add your I and then your C, and then for this one I like to bring the K over with a bit of a flourish, connecting it to the C at the very bottom, and the last thing you'll want to do is dot your I. Also wanted to make a quick note to be rotating that pen so that you're not smashing down the one side with the hard downstrokes. And then next up we've got Abigail. Names that start with A are probably one of my favorites to do. Starting out with a high and elegant A, leaving enough of a tail to connect a B from the cross of the A. I like to bring the B a little bit farther down and then loop it around so that there's a little bit of a gap between the bottom of the B and the original stick of the B. Adding in your I and then looping around with your G, not bringing the tail of the G as high to make the A come a little bit lower just to balance out the name, adding the I at the very end and then connecting the L to it. Then dot your I's and there's Abigail. Now Addison, another A name. I'm doing the A almost identically to Abigail's name, except this time I'm not connecting the cross of the A to the D's, just because it creates a cleaner look if you just have it loop after the D instead of connecting it. If it was just one D, I might still do it, but because there's two, it could create an unbalanced look. From the D's, then adding an I and an S, remembering to make those tails long enough to connect the next letter, and then the O and the N, adding a little bit of a twisting flourish at the end of the N, and then crossing the A. Alright, and now Brandon. B names are another favorite of mine. You can really play around a lot with a name that starts with B, especially adding a lot of flourishes, so let's jump into it. I know I just talked about making a flourished B, but I'm actually going to keep this B a little bit more simple, looping the tail of the B through the lower part of the B and then connecting it to the R and the A, adding the N off the tail of the A, not adding much of a loop or a tail to it, not flourishing it up too much, especially because you've already got the fancy B and the loop of the D and the O. After the O, adding the N, and I'm actually not going to add a loop or a flourish on the end of this N because it is a male name and it can end up looking really feminine the more flourishes you add. Now to Ameena's name. This is a fun one. I always love connecting two of the same letters in a name, so starting out with the A and then the M, not adding a loop off the tail of the A for the M because the M already has enough loops within it, then adding the 2 E's, making a little bit of a loop off of the E for the N to come off, and then attaching the A at the very end with a harder pressure and crossing the A. Okay, and Tony. T's are actually a pretty hard letter of the alphabet because unintentionally you can make them look like another letter on accident. Maybe an F or a I, just depending on how it goes. So I keep it pretty simple with a T. And off the T, I'm actually not going to connect the O. It just gives a cleaner look if it's separate than the N and the Y, bringing the Y a little bit higher up to create a cleaner finish, and there you go. And Kayla. K's are another really fun letter of the alphabet. You can just do so much, especially if you're working with a brush pen. I'm actually going to keep it pretty simple here and just do a standard K. I'm actually not going to connect the letter A to this K. It looks a little bit complicated and messy, and it just is a cleaner look if it's not connected. Bringing the loop of the Y a little bit lower on this just to try and tie in the bottom of that K, especially since it's not connected to the rest of the letters. From the Y, adding the L and the A with a little bit of a flourish at the end of the A. I hope that you found this video helpful. Like, subscribe, and comment your name. I'll try to get to it in a future video.